اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. So yes, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So that puts us in a parasympathetic state, and it's bringing the barakah of those 7 verses, some of which we could sit and talk about forever and ever, but there's so much of the benefits of Al-Fatiha that like I remember one of my teachers was saying that books and books and books can be written on the benefits of Al-Fatiha, and books can be written on the benefits of just Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So for those that have joined us on Facebook Live, Assalamu alaikum, and YouTube Live as well, Assalamu alaikum. We were just we're starting our session today, which is about the stomach, something that's become very relevant in the past year, particularly for myself, but something that I feel is an increasing issue for so many of us. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he spoke about the stomach, he said, the stomach is the home for all illnesses, all right? The stomach is the home for all illnesses, and the remedy is food. But I feel that that's a really interesting hadith in itself, because we know that if the stomach is the root for all illnesses, everything that we're putting in to our stomach can either cause illness or can be of shifa. And so a lot of the times when it comes to treating anything related to the stomach, or anything that needs the stomach to kind of be as a focus of treatment, it's very much to do with decision and to do with balance. It's a lot to do with mizan, as we say, the balance between heat, the balance between cold, the balance between the foods that are healing foods and the foods that are causing illness, but then also foods that I always say this, like we want to make sure that we're actually benefiting and we enjoy the foods that we actually have as well, because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did say there is so much pleasure in foods, but it only becomes damaging when we exceed those pleasures. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So in traditional medicine, the stomach is seen to, and I know we haven't spoken about this a lot, but it's seen to be almost like the temperament of earth. So one thing that I didn't mention before, in traditional medicine, we use a lot of, we liken a lot of body parts, and we liken a lot of the temperaments and the qualities and characteristics with a lot to do with nature. And this is why I sincerely believe that we cannot benefit from the healing of plants and foods if we do not have a love for nature. And when we look at the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we look at the way that nature loved him and he loved nature, like for me, that's just an example in itself. So in traditional medicine, the stomach particularly is seen to be like the earth element. It's the place which nourishes. It's a place where it's the nourisher, just like the earth is the nourisher of life. It provides it's fertile. It provides new growth. It provides energy, and it's very much what the stomach is doing, which means as a temperament, as a character, it's very cold and dry, right? It's very cold and dry, but the function of the stomach is actually to cook. Right? In Chinese medicine, the stomach is actually known to be like the oven of the body. So everything that we're eating, or our breakfast, our lunch, our dinners, everything that we're eating, it needs to go to the stomach to cook. And this is what they say in Chinese medicine, also to cook. And from the stomach and the spleen, particularly, and I say this in Chinese medicine, not necessarily in conventional medicine, it's there that it's cooked. It's a lot of the bacteria is removed, a lot of the negative things that we don't want from the food is removed, and then what happens is that everything is dispersed from the stomach. So the stomach is almost a place that nourishes the entire body, and this is how we look at the stomach in traditional medicine. And I love this because it is really in sync with what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was saying, that the stomach is the home of all illnesses. Because if there's imbalance in the stomach, it means that there will be an imbalance somewhere else in the body. Because as we believe in traditional medicine, the stomach is what nourishes the rest of the body. It gives the rest of the body nutrients, it gives the rest of the body blood, and it gives the rest of the body like chi, like prana, but we have different languages for it, but it's all within the traditional medicine and all within prophetic medicine, but different languages and different names. It's just semantics. So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So knowing that the stomach is the pot, the boiling pot of everything that is within existence when it comes to our body, it's so important that we keep a good balance of heat, right? And I speak about heat when it comes to obviously temperature heat, but then also energetically. So there's certain foods that can cause that can increase heat in our body, increase heat when it comes to what the function of the stomach is. So it can increase the function of the stomach when it comes to digesting. It can increase it when it comes to dispersing nutrients and food and energy. But then also, on the other hand, you have foods that we would say are cold foods. And these are cold foods that will take away heat from the stomach. On the other hand, you also have foods that will also increase too much heat in the stomach. And it's literally, as a herbalist, that is pretty much my, I wouldn't want to say role, but a lot of my work and a lot of my approach to this is sitting and a lot of problem solving, and it's almost like puzzle solving of trying to balance out my patient's heat when it comes to the stomach. So recognizing whether there's too much heat, how we can remove the heat, or if there's not enough heat, how to put heat into that person's stomach. So that's one aspect of the stomach, inshallah. And we're going to talk a lot more about the different foods. I'll give a bit more examples when it comes to the foods and the different things that we do that take away heat from the stomach. I would say majority of the time, if I'm going to be fair, in my clinic personally, majority of the times is actually not enough heat in the stomach. And not enough heat in the stomach, typically you can imagine normally can lead to constipation. Constipation is a very good example of not having enough heat in the stomach. It doesn't necessarily mean, you can also have somebody who has a whole lot of heat in their stomach and they're still constipated. But just to make things very easy, which I must say when it comes to any form of medicine and any form of dealing with us as humans, because none of us are so kind of, either or. I always say that it's nothing either or, but I'm just saying as a general thing. Yeah, constipation would be an indication of not enough heat in the stomach. And too much heat in the stomach would be the opposite, which would be diarrhea or ulcers or acid reflux, things like that. So these are the typical things. And even for those that have experienced those things, you can definitely imagine that if I was to ask you to use a term to describe those feelings or those illnesses, whether it's cold or hot, majority of the times when somebody's constipated, they would definitely agree and be like, yeah, there's a coldness, there's a heaviness, there's like a dampness, it's heavy. Or if somebody has diarrhea, on the other hand, they would definitely be able to be like, yeah, there's a lot of heat. Yeah, sometimes I think we need to speak very plainly about these things. I just realized that some of us might feel a bit uncomfortable that I'm on the radio speaking about constipation and diarrhea, but this is the reality of what's happening. So yes. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So that's one aspect. That's how we approach it within traditional medicine. What I also love is within Western herbal medicine particularly is, and we can see this in all forms of medicine, is now they've discovered, and science has, and I always say this, science has caught up, and science has realized that actually the stomach is a lot more important than we've given it credit for. It does a lot more than just digesting food. It does a lot more than hold a lot of hydrochloric acid and remove bacteria. It does so much more. They're realizing now that the lining of the stomach, part of the lining of the stomach, holds millions and millions and millions of nerve cells, right? Millions and millions of nerve cells. And what they're finding is that these nerve cells are pretty much from the same tissues of the central nervous system. So pretty much from the similar tissues that are linked to the brain, right? So what they're calling the stomach now is almost like, they're calling it the second brain. Or, yeah, the gut brain, the second brain. And so now what science and what medical science is saying, and we can see this again, is what they're saying is a lot of kind of mental health issues like anxiety, depression, even stress, right? Even stress, that they're able to actually treat those illnesses purely by treating the stomach, okay, and vice versa. So for somebody who has a stomach issue, one of the ways that they're able to treat that is in certain circumstances by, in some cases, on antidepressants, some forms of antidepressants, or other kind of psychoactive drugs to treat the stomach. And we know this. I mean, this is what science is now, medical research is now saying, but we know this. We know this already that, when some of us, when we're stressed, for many of us, we can start to feel it, what's the saying? I got butterflies in my stomach, or, you have that feeling of anxiousness, I've got butterflies in my stomach. Or sometimes when people are angry, it goes to the stomach. One of the emotions that are very much linked to the stomach in traditional medicine, and all different organs have different emotions attached to them, but particularly with the stomach is sorrow, worry, sorrow or worry, sorrow and worry, this idea of sadness, really deep sadness and fear and just being worried and just being in that space. And what we have in traditional medicine is the more we hold on to those emotions, the more we hold on to them, the more it will affect the stomach, and vice versa. If somebody already has something that's affecting their stomach, those are the sort of emotions that begin to become a little bit more difficult to handle. And this is really interesting when it comes to dealing with people that have had chronic stomach conditions. And again, this is just me generally speaking. So inshallah, those are kind of the two. There's so many different aspects when it comes to the stomach, but I'm trying my best to keep things really, really simple. I have this tendency that when I get really excited or really passionate about anything, which is particularly about herbal medicine, I tend to kind of go into it. I really kind of go into the details, and before you know it, like I would look across the room and I can see some of my students when I'm doing like my workshops and stuff, and they're just like, huh? Like, what are you saying? So my struggle with this is to keep things as simple and as, although it's very, there is a simplicity in it, but because we're dealing with humans, there's no human that's going to be the same. And when in traditional medicine, I always say, and in prophetic medicine, and the medicine that I practice, we don't treat illnesses, right? Although I'm speaking about this in a very constipation and diarrhea and acid reflux. In reality, we don't treat illnesses. We treat the people. We treat the individuals, and that's what I was saying about looking at the individual and seeing what's working, what heat they can, what ways we can increase heat or decrease heat, or what forms of heat are working for them, or maybe they need some moisture. Maybe they need water, as in like dampness, or maybe there's too much. So it's always like this kind of constant game, I suppose, or it's a constant in and out, constant movement. And I think movement is a very powerful thing, subhanAllah. So yeah, inshallah, we're going to go for a quick break. And when we get back, I think one of the ways that I think perhaps we underestimate the ways when it comes to the stomach and the ways that we can start to heal the stomach, because there's so many of us, especially in Ramadan, there's so many of us that are having stomach issues. The one thing that we really underestimate is our etiquette with food. And this is just food in general. This is not me talking about cold or wet or dry or moist or hot food. This is just food in general, our eating etiquettes. And a lot of this, in actual fact, all of this can be found in the prophetic advice, in the way that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I love to look at this, and I can see that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying exactly like word for word, or no, other way around, sorry, modern day kind of complementary therapies and health and well-being is saying almost word for word exactly what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say when it comes to our eating, our etiquette of eating. And if for those that maybe we can't necessarily, we want to be able to see these examples, I always say look to the inheritors of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look to those that are following, who are lovers of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because when you truly love Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, every action that you do ends up being in a space of copying him. So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We're going to go on a quick break, and when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about ways that we can start the shifa of our stomach. And sometimes what happens when illness comes, what some sort of the signs we can look for, inshallah. All right then. Assalamu alaikum.
Very competitive prices. We are wholesale suppliers to restaurants, butchers and caterers. Visit us at 51 to 53 Upton Lane, London, E7 9PA. Contact us on 07415 474 185.
Usman needs the adhesive to work. If not, his day will be a disaster. Ah! So, Usman, if you really need something to bond, grab a tube of CT1 from your local stockist. An incredibly powerful sealant and construction adhesive that's fast, flexible and strong. It can be used anywhere, even underwater. For more info, ct1limited.com or follow us on Facebook or ring us on 0208 555 1448.
In an age of technological advancement, mass communication and social media, having the right website and app can be the difference that your business needs. AppSite Tech are here to take your business to the next level. No matter how simple or how sophisticated your requirements are, our technicians will work with you to create a bespoke website and app for your organisation. Call us now on 0753 808112 or visit appsitetech.co.uk and book your free consultation now.
Amigos, the signature name when it comes to burgers and shakes. Our succulent burgers are prepared in front of you while you wait. Whether you go for the 6-ounce Mexican or the 10-ounce Texan, or you decide to go for our messy fries or buffalo wings, one thing you're guaranteed is quality. We've also got a range of desserts including our trademark shakes in all your favourite flavours. We're based at 400 Cranbrook Road in Gants Hill, so come down to dine in or order in on Uber Eats or Just Eat. Amigos, hats off to great burgers.
Ramadan FM 2018.
The voice of British Muslims.
Assalamu alaikum. You are listening to Rabia Mali on Ramadan FM 2018. And we are here with the Healing Vibe Show, which is a show that really, as I was saying before the break, just reconnecting to our inner healer. Like, we all have the ability to, Allah has blessed us with the ability to know how to heal and know how to care for this trust, this amana, which is this body that Allah has blessed us with. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we do our best to keep it in good health. And when we are given illness, to seek shifa for that illness, and that is in the form of dua. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would always say, make dua for good health, make dua for good health. But then also, when illness does come for us to seek different forms of shifa when it comes to whether that's foods or herbs or any other means, or body work, massage. And that Allah has blessed us with so many different forms and traditions of healing that sometimes don't necessarily come in the languages and in the terminologies that we perhaps understand. But once you sit and you start to explore it, you realize that a huge majority of these healing arts have prophetic foundations. If you just change the languages that we're using, it's just semantics a lot of the time. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. One of the things that I was saying, and this, please, I always encourage people to always kind of follow through with their own research and their own kind of journey of discovering when it comes to this. But one of the things that I found incredibly interesting was when I looked into traditional Chinese medicine and the ways that in that tradition, when it comes, some of the advice that they would recommend when it comes to our etiquette of food. And the reason why in the Chinese tradition particularly, they have a very specific etiquette when it comes to eating food, is that, like we said, the stomach is the place that nourishes the rest of the body. And so there's a big mindfulness, there's a big way of controlling and being aware of what foods we put into the stomach and how we do it, because everything is very much linked to intention. And that is my first point when it comes to seeking shifa for the stomach. I always say we have been blessed that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ before this idea of mindfulness, the Prophet Muhammad was advised us that before we eat anything is to say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah. And when we forget to, make sure we also say Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And the wisdom behind this, the prophetic wisdom behind, in my opinion, if the Prophet Muhammad did it, I don't need any kind of that's enough justification. I don't need any science to tell me that actually we found out that if you sit and you eat with an intention, if you eat in a space of mindfulness, the digestion of food is better. It decreases indigestion. It actually, in some cases, the numbers of gut flora increase. I don't need science to tell me this. Once I know that the Prophet Muhammad did it, khair, it's enough. Khalas, this is enough. And this is what I'm finding. I'm finding that when I do sit, and I am trying to find, for me it's enough, but when I do sit, I am trying to find, scientific backgrounds or other kind of traditions to almost kind of contribute and kind of make it more relatable to some of my Muslim, but then also some of my non-Muslim students. I'm finding that there's so much when it comes to this. So number one, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, to start every meal with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So when we sit in a space and we're about to eat, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. And when we're cooking as well, this is huge, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I'll tell you a story of one time, this is when I was many years ago, when I was actually studying herbal medicine and I was in clinic. And one of my mentors, one of my teachers was telling us of a restaurant that he had recently eaten in. And he went in and he ate the food and he said it tasted okay. It wasn't anything special. But he said he came away feeling not food poisoning, but a very specific pain to the left side of his stomach. Very, very specific. And he's never had any stomach problems at all. So he ate the food, and then when he left the restaurant, that pain disappeared. It was fine. So he kind of put it down to, I don't know. He thought, okay, maybe a bit of indigestion. I don't know. But the following week, when he went back, the chef who cooked the food at the restaurant found out that he was a herbalist, and said to him, you know what, I really want to sit down and just have a quick chat with you. Let's have a conversation. I've got some health issues. I really like to kind of get your opinion. And so he sat with my mentor, and he found out that the chef was actually complaining of left side abdominal pain. And it turns out, to cut long story short, it turns out that if I remember correctly, the chef actually had, I think it was diverticulitis. He had some kind of inflammation. Chef is a high stress job. He had some kind of inflammation on the left side. And what my teacher at the time, what my mentor was saying, is that we are in a space now that we underestimate the transference of intention, the transference of thought when it comes to preparing our food. And I could talk about this for so long, and I probably would. So we kind of underestimate that. So what I think is really important, that when we are in this space, the reasoning behind Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is that not only does it take away the physical impurities of the food, but if there's any spiritual impurities of the food, any negativities of the food, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim is enough. In the name of Allah is enough to kind of remove that. And that is a huge thing when it comes to the shifa of our food and the shifa of our stomach. I also remember, just to go off on a little bit of a tangent, I also remember one of my other teachers was saying that one of the reasons of obesity in the Western world is that there is no barakah in our food. Right? There's no barakah in our food because we are not saying, because it's not prepared in the name of God, in the name of Allah. It's not prepared with good intentions, and it's not eaten with good intentions anymore. So it means we have to eat more and more and more of it just to feel just to feel full physically, but then also to feel to get that barakah that we should be getting in a crumb. You know, always look back to the lovers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Always look back to the teachers, the awliya and the shuyukh, to see the ways that we should be with food. And I feel like I can guarantee you that if you have a teacher who is coming from the tradition, the prophetic tradition, have a look at the way they are with food. Have a look at the way they are with food. So Bismillah. Number one, always eat with Bismillah. Number two, which we all know, is the hadith of not overeating, of to have 1/3 of food, 1/3 of water, and 1/3 for air. And that hadith alone is enough. If we were to follow that hadith alone, is enough. Those two traditions and teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam: one, to eat with Bismillah and prepare food with Bismillah, and two, to not to keep 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That is enough to kind of to protect us from all illnesses. Like that, those two teachings of the Prophet Muhammad is enough to protect us from all illnesses. But subhanallah, it's very, very different when it comes to the way that we are raised, our culture, culturally how we're raised, and also in a society that when we're raised in a way of we eat to fill. Like there's a eat to fill. So yeah, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. 1/3 for food, 1/3 for water, 1/3 for air. It doesn't necessarily mean that 1/3 that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said for food. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fill that 1/3 with food. We eat to nourish ourselves. We eat to gain pleasure, but we don't have to eat to our full. So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. That's a really, really important point, and I feel like especially in this month of Ramadan, it's actually an easier thing to do. Because obviously, especially at this time on the 20th, 19, 20, 21st kind of days of Ramadan, in the last 10 days of Ramadan, like at this time physically, our stomach has actually, there's been like a shrinkage of the stomach. So for some of us, our appetite has actually shrunk. Our stomach has actually shrunk, so we're not able to even fill our stomachs as much as we want to. So it's so much easier to eat what we need to eat, then drink some water, and the rest is left for air, so that we're able to pray Tarawih and Isha and our Laylatul Qiyam, like to stay up in the night and pray. And there's no way that can be done if half of your stomach is full of water and the other half is full of food. And that tiny bit left, even though there's not much left after half and half, that tiny bit left is just left for air. There's no way you're going to be able to move, and you become heavy. I always think of, again, what my teachers always say: if we look at the inheritors, and you will find that they ate very, very little, and that allowed them to be able to stay up for nightly prayers. I just think about when I've eaten a really heavy meal, and I literally, I sit there and I'm like, oh, that was a really good meal, and like 5 minutes later I've like conked out because my body is just like, this is gonna take a lot to digest. Let's just put you in a state of sleep. So it makes me think of that. So just to bear that in mind as well. So those two. Number 3 is the tradition of eating what is lawful and what is good, what is halal and tayyib. And halal and tayyib we could do, like, that's a separate conversation in itself. But to keep things light, as in anything that is halal, and halal is in the way of, obviously if it's meat, it's been raised and slaughtered in the correct way. But when it comes for food as well, there's also food that has been the money that's been used to buy that food. Be very wary of that. The people that are making the food, just to have that wariness as well. And tayyib is goodness. And my interpretation or my understanding, and I like to include in that understanding of halal and tayyib, particularly tayyib, is this idea of eating what is of the land. Right, eating what is of the land, eating what is of this land, or the land that you're in, or making sure the majority of your diet is of the land of which you are in. I think I mentioned a few weeks ago that Allah is so merciful, Allah is so great, where Allah gives you what you need. And if we look at what's seasonal of this land, everything that's seasonal of the land in that season is what's needed by us as humans. So, for example, we are now in the time of spring. We're moving into summer, but we're now in the time of spring. And spring is a time for detoxing the blood, particularly. And if we look and see what is seasonal in the land, we will find that there's a whole lot of greens, spinach, kale, spring onions, beetroot. These are things that are now seasonal of the land. And all these things I've mentioned are all very detoxifying of the blood. And this is the time that we need to be doing it. Another example is that this is the time that we particularly experience a lot of hay fever. And you will find, and if you look out, you'll find there's a whole lot of nettle growing, and there's a whole lot of elderflower, these beautiful little white flowers that are found on the trees. And lo and behold, what is particularly very, very good for hay fever, nettle is a natural antihistamine, and elderflower particularly is really good when it comes to removing mucus and catarrh. And particularly good for those of us that get blocked noses and teary eyes during hay fever. So Allah provides. Number 4, to not eat too late. Normally, we can put that aside for Ramadan, because obviously most of us are eating quite late. But normally, when we're not in Ramadan, they say it's better to eat maybe about 3 hours before bed. No less than 3 hours before bed, to give your body that time to digest before you put yourself in a state of rest. And this will vary, because if you're eating a very heavy, meaty, beefy meal, it can sometimes take 6 hours for that to digest. So just be wary. Before the meal, before your evening, before sleep, before rest, before the evening, should be a meal that is very easy to digest. Soups, I'm having an obsession with soups and broths because they easily digest. The last one, which is, there's so much more, the idea of sharing and eating together, but there's so much fun. But the last one, because 5 is a good number, is the idea of balance. And this is this idea of making sure that we have a good balance of different carbohydrates and protein and fiber. Let's give this a go. I've got a caller. Let's give this a go. All right, here we go. Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hey, assalamu alaikum. I can hear you. How are you, brother?
Alhamdulillah. I just wanted to basically say to you, sister, that you're doing your shows are absolutely amazing, so informative, and truly benefiting from them so much. It's just so good to see that how you're basically aligning the prophetic sunnah and making it so relevant in today's day and age. Alhamdulillah. So I just wanted to basically say thank you very much for your show.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you so much for tuning in and listening in. I know today's been I don't have any guests today, so today's been very much with almost like a podcast kind of thing. But inshallah, if you're taking benefit from it, alhamdulillah.
Definitely been very beneficial. All your shows have been very beneficial, and just wanted to congratulate you. MashaAllah.
Shukran. Thank you so much. And inshallah, I pray that your Ramadan, the last 10 days of Ramadan, are just going to increase and continue to be a blessing for you and your family, inshallah.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much,
right,
sister.
good.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, I think okay, bismillah. I always get a bit panicky when it comes to these when it comes to the phone, but alhamdulillah, it came through. We did this, alhamdulillah. So bismillah, we're going to quickly go for a break. Those are the 5 things. We're going to quickly go for a break, and then when we get back, we're going to finish with a few questions that when I said to some of my patients and some of my contacts and some of the people in my community and just a lot of viewers, listeners, and I said that I was doing this session on the digestive system and the stomach, I said, are there any particular questions that maybe you want us to have a conversation about? So bismillah, I'll be answering some of those when we get back, and inshallah, if you do have any questions in the meantime, do call in on the number 0333 011 6786, or ask a question on Facebook, and perhaps when I come off air, I can answer one of those questions. So inshallah, I'll see you after the break. Assalamu alaikum.
Ranges, Maseratis, Aston Martins, cause you name it, they got it with the best prices in town. Sorted! Looks like I'm going to this wedding in a Range then. They'll drop off the car and pick you up once you're done. Just give them a ring on 01798 397 916 or visit them online, spmhire.com, or find them on Instagram.
Looking for meat and groceries? Look no further than Waris Food Store in Walthamstow. Visit the store to view our special Ramadan offers. 420 Hull Street, Walthamstow, E17 9AA. Or for free delivery, call us on 0208 521 0000. We have fresh deliveries of poultry and vegetables every day. Waris Food Store in Walthamstow.
Reliance Solicitors fight to protect your legal rights. Our firm offers a wide range of services including immigration, family law, commercial law, civil litigation, personal injury, landlord and tenant disputes and employment law.
Assalamu alaikum, you're listening to Rabia Mali on Ramadan FM 2018. Inshallah, just to close the show, we've been speaking about, for those that are just tuning in, we've been speaking about the stomach. Inshallah. And the way of gaining shifa of the stomach, and some of the most simplest ways of removing illness from the stomach is through the etiquette of eating. Like, I cannot stress that enough. Like, just those etiquettes that I mentioned before the break is enough to kind of to be as a means of shifa for the stomach. And that's even before we start having a conversation about make sure you get enough protein, make sure you get high fiber, making sure you got a lot of the correct amount of minerals and vitamins. That is even before we have this discussion. The first thing that we should always look at is the etiquette of the eating. Is that person eating when they're angry? Are they eating when they're sad? Are they eating standing up? Are they somebody who likes to eat by themselves? Are they eating and watching television? Are they eating and between each morsel of food, it's just one after the other. Or are they somebody who's sitting and before they start they're saying Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, somebody who's in a state of gratitude when they're eating. And I'm not even having a conversation about what they're eating, like I said. So that in itself is one of the most powerful ways of having shifa for the stomach. So for any of you that have stomach or gut issues, always have a look at the way that you're eating or the way the food is being prepared. And I say the way the food is being prepared, that's to do with how it's being prepared locally, as in like in your own household, but then also have a look at the way the food is being prepared on a commercial scale. And it's for that reason. I assume there's so many different reasons, but I know that my sheikh, he would always say, try not to eat out. Try not to eat out because we don't know what kind of, we don't know who's preparing our food. So Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So one of the questions I got from you listeners is about constipation, particularly in this month of Ramadan. I'm sure that this is something that perhaps some of us are really, really struggling with this Ramadan, because the long hours of fasting, alhamdulillah, it's wonderful, but it does mean that it's more likely for us to be dehydrated. And also for most of us, we're eating a lot less than what we would normally do. Well, subhanAllah, inshallah, we're eating a lot less than what we normally would do. So naturally, we might be put into a state where we might be constipated or might have those feelings of constipation and bloatedness. So one of the things that I would recommend, particularly in the month of Ramadan, is, and I say this all the time, is to just try and get your fluid intake up as much as you can. It's very hard because you don't have a huge window of time, but sipping throughout from iftar to suhoor, just sipping water and water. Coconut water is a very quick and easier way of hydrating the body. Also, there is a form of water that works with electrolytes when it comes to the different salt intakes, but that's for a different story. That can also really help when it comes to hydrating the actual body. So that's number one. I would also say making sure that the foods that we're eating are also very hydrating. So not eating, dry foods. I don't know if anybody's really getting like a crisp craving or anything like that. Hard foods, these can also cause a lot of dehydration to the body. Spicy foods, can cause spices in like chili, hot foods, chili foods can cause a lot of dehydration to the body as well. So to try and reduce the amount that we're eating as well, to have that awareness, and to really increase the amount of hydrating foods. And of course, you know that I'm going to say a lot of the hydrating foods would be the fruits and the vegetables. I know that watermelon is a big favorite during the month of Ramadan, and it's not seasonal, but it's huge amount of water in it. I would say something that's seasonal that has similar actions of watermelon would be cucumbers. So cucumbers is a very water-based vegetable or salad, and it also is very cooling, which is very handy for some of us, because fasting can create a little bit of heat in the body sometimes. So those are the things I would really look out for. I would also make sure tea, when it comes to the bloatedness feeling, one of the best teas I would recommend, I like to recommend, and would be after, when you're doing your iftar and your dinner afterwards, would be ginger, fennel, and recently I've got this big love for fenugreek. But to be fair, any spice, so that includes cinnamon, that would include aniseed, that could also include nutmeg, any of these as a spice, although I wouldn't use nutmeg too much, to be honest, but any of those as a spice work really well as teas. So you can either mix them up, they have really warming effect on the stomach. We would call carminative, so they have a really relaxing effect on the stomach, which can sometimes be really helpful when it comes to a bloated feeling, and they really support with the digestion of foods. Peppermint is also a very good favorite, really good favorite as well for those that are having iftar with peppermint tea. I always say peppermint and a bit of ginger and a tiny bit of honey. If you're somebody who's not used to herbal teas, really can be quite useful. I'd also really make sure I increase fiber. So high fiber foods, oats, the brands, bran flakes, Weetabix, things like this in the morning if you're particularly constipated, can be quite useful. In general, I say be careful with the amount of cow dairy that you're having, but that varies between people, that varies between individuals. And also the last thing that I would do is actually use, and I mentioned this just before the break, about how the stomach is very much linked to the nervines. The nervines is very much linked to the nervous system. So what I would use a lot of the times would be something that works with the nervous system. Particularly one of my favorite ones is chamomile. I have this huge love for chamomile because it does work it relaxes the stomach wall particularly, and especially the gut wall, so even the large intestines, particularly the colon. But then it also has a really calming and a sedative, kind of relaxing effect on the mind as well. So for those that kind of tend to get quite anxious quite quickly and it goes straight to your stomach, I'm worried I'm going to be late, goes to your stomach. Oh no, it goes to your stomach. Chamomile is one of the teas that is underestimated. Get yourself some good quality chamomile, organic chamomile tea, and that should be drunk during Ramadan. But then even after Ramadan, it should be drunk about 2 to 3 times a day. And that, to be honest, with the correct diet as well, should be enough to remove a lot of the symptoms of bloatedness and things like that. Can be really helpful when it comes to bloatedness, and can even be really helpful when it comes to constipation. So Bismillah. And the other thing I would also recommend, and only recently, again, is there's a big thing now when it comes to gut flora. It is pretty powerful. The medical science is now showing that varying amounts of gut flora, the good bacteria in our gut, varying amounts can be associated with mental health illnesses, can be associated with ADHD. In some, although there's less medical research on it, but definitely clinical kind of patterns that they're seeing when it comes to gut flora and behavioral patterns as well. So these are all things that I think gut flora is a big thing now. So simple, just get yourself some probiotics, but good quality probiotics. So probiotics that are linked, good quality probiotics, and normally they're either in a liquid form or powdered form. And I would really recommend getting some really good probiotics. If you can't get the probiotics as a supplement, probiotic food, so kefir, sauerkraut, which is like fermented foods, any form of fermented foods. So kefir, sauerkraut, kombucha, kimchi, and I'm sure within every culture there is a different form of fermented foods, and they really do repopulate the gut with good bacteria, which is so important when it comes to digestion. Like there's so much that this good bacteria is that's doing. So a lot of the times whenever I have somebody who's coming with that, coming with some of these symptoms of constipation and bloatedness, and even diarrhea, to be honest, any stomach inflammation, it's highly likely that this is a very similar approach that I will go. I always look at the person's mood, their eating habits, and what they're eating. So their emotional state / spiritual state, their eating habits. Okay, so their eating etiquette of how they're eating, and then also what they're eating. And once we kind of look at those three things, then we can start to kind of apply the different things. So I think that's it for me, from me today. Inshallah, I really pray, and thank you so much for those that called in and showing their support. It's been, like I said, it's been a bit of I haven't had any guests today. It's a bit of a lonely day in here in the studio, but alhamdulillah, it's just been an opportunity to really sit and have a conversation about something that I just think is so important. Inshallah, join us next week at the same time, Tuesday from 2 to 3. It will be our last show, so inshallah, let me know. I mean, at the moment I have a nice idea with what I would really like to kind of end this Healing Vibes show with. Let me know what you think or what you would love for us to have a conversation about. Let me know in the comments. Let me know. Add us on Facebook. Add us on Facebook on the Healing Blessing Clinic Facebook page. Just drop a comment and let me know what sort of things you would love to hear. Or on Instagram, the Healing Blessing Herbal Blessing Clinic. I'm losing the ability to speak in actual normal sentences. So I definitely think that's my cue for me to kind of sign off. Thank you so much, and may Allah bless you. And I leave you again with the 7 verses of Shifa, particular Shifa. So Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. Assalamu alaikum.
Services and immigration.